I've been playing a fair bit of top lane this season, and I wanted to talk about some common patterns that I've observed that are causing top laners to lose games that they should be winning. To preface this video, I'm going to say that if you are a split pushing top laner like say Tryndamere, who excels at split pushing and sucks at teamfighting, then by all means split push your heart's content and hope that you get the enemy nexus. Good luck, you'll be needing it. However, if you're playing a tanky top laner, it's a bit more complicated. Ultimately, you are the front line for your team. Your job is to tank damage and hit people with crowd control abilities so that your carries can fire away from the backline safely, and this is where your real value lies, and by making the most of this, this is how you're going to win games. But you will not be teamfighting 24/7, so you do need to strike a balance between pushing your lane and teamfighting. Most top laners struggle to find this balance, so let's take a look at some examples on how this works in game. In this first example, we have a top lane Amumu who has lost his turret and believes that he should not be leaving this lane until he manages to take his opponent's turret. The key mistake here is not understanding that the laning phase is officially over as soon as your team loses their first turret. The reason for this is that your opponents who took their first turret might look to rotate and make a play against your teammates. In this example, the enemy top lane Wukong makes a play onto our Jinx while Amumu is still in the top lane. In the teamfight that follows, most of the blue team gets wiped out and the red team starts pushing into the blue team's base. Amumu arrives late trying to save the base, but he's outnumbered and goes down fairly easily. This brings us to our first rule. The laning phase is officially over as soon as the first turret goes down on either team. Beyond this point, you should always be checking the map to see what's happening before going back to your lane. Here we have a Maokai who's roaming because he's lost his lane. His presence in the bottom river drives out the enemy jungler and gets his team a kill on the enemy rumble. Afterwards he heads back into the top lane and works with his jungler to bring down the enemy Gnar who has overstayed his welcome. Maokai is at very low HP, but he's also a tank, so he's going to come back mid and fight back against the push by the enemy team at mid, and we pick up a kill on Leona. The key value that Maokai provides to all of these fights is that he has crowd control abilities to lock down targets and is great at soaking up damage that would otherwise be targeted at our carries. So what happens when the tanky top laners are not around? In this example, the support Alistar on the blue team gets caught out in the Baron pit and the red team makes a play to kill him. The blue team's carries come in to help Alistar, but with the absence of Maokai they end up taking most of the damage from the enemy team. Gnar single-handedly takes out Katarina and Maokai arrives late to the fight. The red team goes on to win this fight, and you can see by how low that they got, this would have been a very different team fight if Maokai had been there from the very beginning. This brings us to our second rule. As a tanky top laner, you can decide the outcome of a team fight through your crowd control and ability to soak up damage. Because of this, your presence acts as a deterrent against initiates by the enemy team, and your absence acts as an invitation for the enemy team to initiate on your team. Now you cannot spend the entire game escorting your teammates everywhere, but there are two specific situations that you want to keep an eye out for. In this example, the top lane Jarvan makes a play over the wall and we end up killing the enemy Nocturne and Annie. Despite the small break that we get, we are behind by quite a bit. The blue team wants to use their numbers advantage to take down the red team's mid turret, and the red team does not want to give it up. The moment Jarvan leaves to go farm the top lane, the enemy Katarina will initiate a play killing both Jinx and Galio. The key point here is that players tend to be very aggressive when pushing for turrets or inhibitors. If you're going to separate from your team near a turret, let them know why and get them to pull back before you commit to leaving, otherwise your team will overstay and die the moment you leave. The same situation also applies at Dragon and Baron. In this case, most of the blue team has committed to securing the dragon, while Maokai has committed to getting the turret in the top lane. Seeing Maokai up top, the enemy Gnar engages and forces a fight that goes in favor of the red team. The blue team gets wiped out and they lose dragon in exchange for the one turret that Maokai got. If you are the tanky top laner, you need to realize that telling your team that you're pushing another lane does not really accomplish much. There will be a fight with or without you over the dragon or Baron. This brings us to our third rule. Never push an alternate lane when your teammates have set their sights on a turret, dragon, or Baron. Your presence will be required for the impending teamfight, and it's better to fight as a team of 5 and face the consequences, over the alternative of telling your team that it's their fault they got caught as your nexus blows up. A carry left on their own is a disaster waiting to happen. In this example, Jinx walks straight into the enemy Kha'Zix and ends up getting herself killed. You need your carries alive in order to win teamfights, and this means you will have to make up for their poor positioning. This means you will be the one leading the way to a point on the map, or body blocking any skill shots that might hit your teammates. In this example, we have limited vision of the Baron pit and our Vayne puts herself in a very dangerous spot, trying to set up an ambush on the enemy team. Leona and Graves do not want to get caught here, but Vayne has committed to forcing the play. Whoever gets caught here will be blamed if you lose. It's a terrible job, but you need to be the top laner that your team needs and not the one that it deserves. And so I walk out in front of Vayne. The hook that would have caught Vayne hits me instead, and the enemy team cannot initiate with the hook onto a tanky Renekton, and so the play that follows allows us to kill the enemy support instead of being a team fight that starts with the death of our AD carry. This brings us to our fourth and final rule. When teamfights are about to happen, you need to act as the front line for your carries, and ensure that you body block any abilities that could remove them from the fight immediately. These are the 4 points you want to keep in mind to win more games as a top laner. The laning phase is officially over when the first turret goes down. Your presence or absence deters or invites the enemy team to initiate on your team. Make sure you're there to support your team when they're going for turrets, dragon, or baron. And lastly, make sure you body block any critical skill shots against your carries at the start of a teamfight. If you found this video helpful, do subscribe to the channel, follow on Twitter, and leave a comment about what kind of content you would like to see in future videos. Do check out the video links on either side for more gameplay tips and strategies in this channel.